Hello and welcome to another video. So I'm just checking I don't lose this seat. Okay, so welcome to another video. We're looking at Tilbury Riverside Cruise Terminal. It's part of Tilbury Docks, or was part of Tilbury Docks. In the 1930s, the landing stage was extended and built, and the building actually goes back to 1886. Now that's the train station part of it. So obviously Tilbury Riverside is in Tilbury in Thurrock in Essex, and it's got a really important history of part of our nation. And it's where the Windrush come in, and we've now got the Memorial Bridge that runs down now. It's a fantastic location. I'm going to put some videos in there for you. But the actual site itself stirs quite a lot of emotions with people. And we're going to look into some of those ghost stories and these strange happenings of there during this video. So like a lot of buildings in this country, it has a long history. Say it started in 1886 when it was built, and it was part of the old train station. And going forward over the years, I think most of us may have used that at a certain age, getting the ferry over towards Gravesend, get on the train at Stamford, travel down there, go to the train station area, then walk through into the ferry terminal. I know that it was one of my first ever school trips, going over to see Pocahontas in Gravesend, and we was taking the train and walked through the station area, through the old control barriers, and then onto the landing stage. As you imagine, with a building of such age, it comes with a lot of history and a lot of stories that are attached to it. And it's a very, very busy location. It's still used to this day. You still get cruise ships turn up and use it, and you get hundreds and thousands of passengers coming on and off of there all the time. And the terminal itself is actually used to run the local elections, what happened a few weeks ago. Yeah, it has quite high emotional on that night. But it is still used. It's still used by the community. The building itself has had some work done on it and restored, and I hope it's going to have a great long future. So recently, I've just said we've had the local elections down now. It actually goes back to 2021 when we also had elections there, and I was doing the postal opening accounts, and I was talking to security guards that were telling me some of the stories that they've heard down there and how they feel about the place. And I thought it would be nice to eventually do a full video on it. Now, I actually got interested into the building so way back in the early 2000s, I think it was. I think maybe 2001. I met a security guard there that was going around telling me all the stuff. He escorted me around the building. I took some photos. If I can find them ones out, I'll dig them on here as well. But over the years, I've taken so many photos down there, but never actually been able to do what I call a proper investigation now. So it's only based on the stories. And when you look up for the stories of Tilbury Riverside, like the ghost side of it and all that, you can't find anything anywhere. It seems that there's hardly any reported. So it's quite a task to actually dig out these reports and these tales. And lucky enough, I did find a set of reports I've done in 2007 that I wrote down some stories and the articles where I got them from, so I was able to match those with some of the stories that I later was told even just a few weeks ago. I put an entry video onto YouTube as a YouTube short to say I was going to make this video, and since then I've had a lot more information, so I've had to come back and remake this video because some of the stories that you've told me from that were more interesting than some of the information I already had. So it hasn't given me a great length of time to research all those in details, but I hope you're going to find them quite interesting. So we're actually going to go back and start in 1935. This is just after the building opened up with the landing stage, but the train station is obviously still the original train station, and the porter there at the time, so you used to feel quite depressed standing there welcoming people on. And what would normally be quite a joyous departure of people leaving, and there's a new building and everyone was so happy to be using it, a new ferry service that's going over to Gravesend. I found it quite strange and very emotional all the time, as if to feel that felt to send them off and they're never going to come back alive again. So he was quite depressed about that, and he was actually speaking to another guard, and that guard turned around and said to him he had had the same feelings, and what he believed it was that the site obviously was used for people leaving for World War One and for people leaving to go to Australia. I mean, no, Tilbury Docks did have Don Bradman coming on the cruise ship when he came out to play the Ashes series. So it was quite, you know, as I say, it is a very important dock, and it was used for these departures at the time where people didn't return. And he was thinking that he was picking up on these feelings of sadness, of maybe their faults, that when they were leaving the country to get onto cruise ships to go off to the war, or to go over to Australia where they've never going to come back again. So he put it down to that. Now he wrote a short piece in a book that is available in the Essex Library. I can't remember the name of the book, and I'll put the title down in there. I think it is not Landscapes, that's Randall Bingley. But he mentions this in his stories of working at Tilbury Riverside, and I think it might have been republished recently when they done the Windrush anniversary. Jumping forward to 1955, I guess you can say it's our first proper sighting of something mysterious. And again, this comes from people working at the train station. And one evening the porter had come off, and his friend was there who cleans the station, and they were cleaning up, and there was a gentleman standing over by the ticket office. He went over to the gentleman, asked him, had he missed the train, or was he waiting to go over onto the ferry? And the gentleman looked at him and he said he was waiting for his brother to come back. And he said, well, I don't think there's any more services coming in for the night. He goes, but you know, I'll go and check with who was the porter at the time. He went over and spoke to the porter, and the porter went, yeah, I'd seen him standing out there earlier. He seems to have just been standing around waiting for someone. He said, yeah, it's his brother. He's waiting for his brother to come back. He said, we've got no more in and outs for the rest of the night now. That's it. Nothing else has turned up. So the cleaner turned around, and as he looked, the gentleman had actually disappeared. What makes it, I guess, more paranormal is that all the doors were locked. Everything was locked up. The building was actually locked up for that night. So they couldn't, there's no way of getting in or out the building without asking the porter or the cleaner to let them out the building. So they searched around the building, and they agreed that this gentleman was not in that building. And they had a chat between them, and they said, oh, do you think it was a ghost? And they laughed and joked about it. And a few days later, they were sitting in the canteen and they was talking about it. And one of the female cleaners turned around and said that she had seen the gentleman a few weeks beforehand, and exactly the same thing had happened. And she thought, not that she was going mad, she just thought that the gentleman found another way out the building. So putting two and two together, they've put it down to being a ghost of a gentleman that's waiting there for his brother returning. It may have been from the war, but the description of the gentleman's clothing actually fitted the time period of like 1950s. So it wasn't as if he was going back to World War II times, although that was like 5-10 years beforehand. It's still sort of, there was a change in fashion during that time. Now going forward just a few more years to 1960, we have a report of a gentleman that was just there to get the Gravesend ferry. You've never used the Tilbury ferry, it's actually a separate part of the building. Now that you drive on and you drive down onto the landing stage, you can get a ferry from there, and it takes you just a short distance over the River Thames onto Gravesend. And the gentleman was waiting for his ferry, and he could see a lady standing over by the wall, and she was sobbing. He went up there and asked the lady if she was okay, and she said that she was waiting for her son to come back from Gravesend, and she'd been waiting a long time, and she didn't know when he was coming back. And he asked her, what does your son do? And she said he works on the river boats. Now what we gather from this is that her son had actually died a few years beforehand, but she actually just goes there to stand where her son would leave for work, and it was just a way of passing time to remember him. Why she said that she was waiting for her son to come back, we don't know, but maybe it was just she didn't want to tell the true story of what had gone on. So a few weeks went by from the gentleman talking to the lady, and he was going back, going on the ferry as he normally would do, and another gentleman said to him, the other week I see he's talking to a lady up there on the bridge. Was she okay? He said, yeah. He goes, she was waiting for her son to come back over. And he said, well, because that's strange, because I saw her a few years ago, and I asked her, and she said the same thing to me. More time went past, and a third person was seen talking to the lady, and he walked down, and they said, what did she say to you? She goes, yeah, he says that she's waiting for her son to come over. And they decided they're going to walk back up to ask her more information. Is there anything they can do to help her? As all three of them walked back up to the bridge, the gangway of where you walk down onto the ferry, they got to near the top and the lady was standing there and she's walking back along the wall and coming just level with the tunnel, the entrance. The best way to describe it, if you don't see this on video, is they're like the bridges that go over train stations. No, they're those open sort of tunnels. The lady, as she walked past the tunnel, she vanished literally halfway past the tunnel. The three gentlemen looked at each other and said, what you been drinking? And they were reasonably freaked out about it. And this lady had just vanished in front of their eyes. And it's something they kept to themselves. They'd meet up regularly on their journeys over to the ferry. They'd talk about it, and the lady hadn't been seen again. Then they're having a chat with the ferry boat driver. Then they're having a chat with the ferry boat driver. Driver? Sailor? Steerer? Operator? Ferry operator? I don't know what you call them. Skipper? Is it skipper? Anyway, it's a skipper. That's a fishing trawl, isn't it? Ferryman. Yeah, don't pay the ferryman. So yeah, having a chat with the ferryman, and he turned around and said that she's actually a ghost of a lady that died of a broken heart after she found out her son had died working on the Thames. He had drowned in the Thames and she died of a broken heart. But before she died, she used to stand at the wall waiting for her son to return home. One of the most common things around that area of Tilbury Riverside, around where the ferry is actually of sadness and depression. And it's no shock to, when you see the site, that it's actually been used for people to end their lives off of. Even quite recently, there's someone that I knew did that. And I don't know if that's because you feel it, but when I go there, I do feel that sadness there. But also, it's part of the river where bodies do wash up. People that jump off of maybe bridges in London, the way the river bends, they tend to wash up around that area. It's not nice, but it does tend to happen. And keeping that in mind, what we have next is someone constantly reporting hearing a screaming coming from that area. Now, are they regularly hearing? They could be foxes. I mean, we know the noises that foxes make. Well, I will say you are right next to sort of the Wells End pub until we fall. So all that area is so steeped in history, and there could be anything that could be triggering. If you believe in paranormal and ghosts, there could be spirits bleeding over from the other areas there, from the Fort, or from the Wells End pub, which has got a great history. And I'd love to do a proper ghost video, or maybe an investigation down there one day. But what we have, and it's quite a recent one, the industry has sort of overtaken the area, and it's now stored. A lot of cars are stored over there for different companies and all that. And we have two gentlemen that regularly park cars down there that of a night time kept hearing a screaming sound, and they'd go over there and investigate it, and they never see anything over there. And this was going on for months, and they started to put it down to the foxes, and they said, but it sounds like a male voice, a male screaming for help. And one night in particular, the screaming was so loud they walked right over onto this beach side, and they said it was coming over more towards the ferry terminal itself, but they couldn't get through because it was all locked up. They couldn't get through the iron gates that were there, but they were looking through over the sort of the fence where the landing stage goes down, and onto where the platform will be for the old landing stage. And they could hear this screaming, and they called the police, and the police come out again, couldn't find nothing. No one was ever reported missing. But again, a few nights later, they heard the screaming again, so they decided to walk up there. And this time, as they got up towards the landing stage, they see someone walking up the second tunnel. I'll try and show this in the photos of where the second tunnel is. It's further down, it's older, it hasn't got all the paintings on the windrush on the windows. It's the one further over from there. It seems to be a little bit more broken up. But I believe it's like the original bridge down onto the ferry. They see a gentleman walking up the bridgeway, crying and screaming. Again, they phoned the police come up, they got into the building, they looked round and come back out and said, no, there's no one there, we cannot find anyone there. And I believe that they even checked the CCTV of this, because this was quite recent, so they checked on the CCTV of this, and again, nothing was there at all, nothing was ever found. Now, the next one comes from someone who actually contacted me from the little intro video I've done on this, and we agreed to call his dad George. Now, George worked from 1970 up until the day the Tilbury Riverside train station closed, which must have been about 89. I remember falling asleep on a train coming back from a Liverpool football game, and it pulled into Tilbury Riverside that weren't really using as a stop, and we had to walk along train lines up to Tilbury to get and actually we ended up walking to Stamford along train lines to get back to Stamford Hope. So it was around about the 89, 90 when it shut. But George had worked there over the years, and he gave quite a few stories regarding strange happenings there. And there's quite normal things like items moving around, brooms disappearing, or brooms moving on their own. Another one was a trolley cart that would regularly roll across in the opposite direction to the slope. So I guess pushed across the floor inside the ferry terminal and go up against the wall with a loud bang. It would make everyone jump, especially late at night. The one that sticks into George's head that he repeatedly told his son was of an encounter he had with a gentleman, and if you know what's coming. Yeah, it's a ghost video. So he's standing there one night just having a chat with a gentleman. Deep conversation, and he turns around and his friend goes to him, who are you talking to? And he turns around, points, and there's no one standing there. And he keeps repeating the same story again and again and again. And his friends at work say, no, you're crazy, mate, there was no one there, no one was ever standing there. A few weeks later, George sees the gentleman walking back through the terminal carrying a big old backpack, and he goes up to talk to the gentleman, but as George gets near the gentleman disappears. By this time, George is thinking he's going a little bit crazy, and lucky enough for George, one of his friends went, I see him, I see that gentleman, he disappeared. And together they was like saying, I told you it was a ghost, it's a ghost. George was quite happy that he wasn't going quite senile just yet, but over the years a lot of these events seem to happen more and more often to George, and he felt as if he was sort of selected to see a lot of these people. Another thing he used to see quite a lot of, or hear a lot of, was children. So when the station was shut up, he'd still hear children running around and playing as if it was really busy. And he went on, just before it was shut, he was talking to a colleague that worked there, and his colleague confided into him that something had happened to him a few weeks beforehand. His colleague had been working on the late shift. Everything was shut up, no more trains were coming back in, and the ferry service had stopped. And he was just sitting there doing a bit of paperwork, and you could hear sort of children playing. He walked back out into the big hall, and you'll see the photos on the video. The hall was massive. And he said it was really busy. He goes, all of a sudden, it was just packed of people. He says probably about 200 people in there. He goes, but they all look really old, like as if all the old clothing, and there's children running around. And he said all of a sudden it just blank, it just all disappeared in front of him. And he said to him, it was like, going back in the past, as if I time travelled into the past. And after what George had seen and all that, he sort of just accepted it and went, well, this place is a weird place. And funny enough, that sighting of a packed ferry terminal or cruise terminal has been reported over the years by different security guards. When they're walking past, they hear as if it's a really packed building, as if there's loads of people in there, and they open up the doors and it's dead quiet. There's nothing going on, it's completely empty. They shut the doors, they go to walk away, and it sounds almost like there's a party in there. You know what it sounds like when you're in a packed train station, how loud it is with everyone chattering. That is what they describe it as. But they open the doors and it's dead quiet and there's no one inside the building. As soon as they shut the doors, they walk away, it starts again. And a couple of final quick ones for you. We have, on the community side of the building, we have a kitchen area that is used by some members. And two ladies were using it and the door slammed on them and they heard a deep laugh. They were the only two people in the building. Whoever it was found it quite funny and they just slammed the door on them, and I was trying to open the door and the door wouldn't open, and then suddenly it gave. And again, if you know the building, there's no way out apart from the one door at that time anyway, and there was no one about, so they knew that there was no one sort of playing a joke on them, and it completely freaked them out. Now when I was looking back at my old documents on this, and I found some photos I took in 2021, which isn't long ago, it's I found a photo of a toilet door that I took, and I couldn't remember why I took it, and then I realised I remembered it. I'd been there for the postal vote opening in 2021. I remember telling my fellow councillors this. They think I was going mad, being as they know I do this anyway. They all think I'm mad anyway, especially when I've done the UFO video. I mean, God blimey, that was a difficult one to explain. Yeah, that was an interesting time. But on this one, I'd gone in to use the loo, and the toilet cubicles, there's 3 of them. As I walked in, each door just went bang, bang, bang. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was baking hot day and everyone was sweating in there. The windows were open, but there was no breeze. Literally, we could not breathe in that building. It was so hot. And I just remember walking in there, the door behind me had shut, so there's no vacuum behind it. Literally, all the doors just went bang, bang, bang in order. It completely freaked me out. And I thought no one's going to believe me this. And I took a photo of the door just to remind myself of what happened. So if I ever done a video on this, I'd have something to say on it or a photo to show of it. And I'm going to have to dig through my computer to bring it back up. But it was just one of those ones I wanted to add to the end of this video. Thank you for the interactions on the videos, and please keep sending me your stories and suggestions of what you'd like to see. I've got loads of more local ones coming up, but I'm also going to be spreading out a little bit further with some stories that people have asked me to cover. I know I've been asked to look at the Enfield poltergeist story, that they'd like me to put my spin on it, or to my version of it, or view, or whatever opinion, and the Skinwalker Ranch over in America. Bit out of my depth on that one. My opinions may not fit with that. I'm more than happy to do a video me covering that. I'll probably get copyrighted from whatever, but I'll cover that quite happily. But I have got a number of videos coming up pretty soon. One, I'm communicating with someone from YouTube comment section regarding a place over in Fobbing. It's getting really interesting. It's matching up with a lot of stuff that I know about it. So we're working on that one and hope to bring that to you really soon. But it's a really interesting one. So yeah, I actually got more votes in my election than I have got subscribers. So, and that wasn't that great. So if you do like the video, please give it a subscription, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next one. Bye.